to the Executive Outlook. I'm Isha Taneja, co-founder and CEO of Complear Infosystem. Today, host for the Executive Outlook. Today's guest is a data and AI leader who has spent 20 years at the intersection of data, business strategy, and technology. It has seen firsthand how the right data can transform the way companies sell, manage, and make decisions. Gurpinder Dhillon is a head of data and AI and also served in multiple companies where he led a $400 million data management business serving some of the largest enterprises in the world. Welcome, Gurpinder, to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Isha.
All right. So today we are going to discuss very important topic about sales and marketing, how these teams are struggling with data and how they can take an initiative and fix their foundation and get the initiatives what they want to do it. So this is the topic of conversation we are going to have. Before starting it, I really want to understand and to learn about yourself, about your journey, how you came into the field of data.
Of course. Thank you once again for having me and giving me the opportunity to share some best practices that I have learned over time to hopefully help others that are listening. So my background is actually, it didn't start in data. It started in computer science, software engineering, followed by business. That's where I started. And it shaped how I have seen everything since. Over this exciting journey, data, I believe, chose me instead of me choosing data as a career. As you can imagine, engineers are trained to ask a simple question: does this thing actually work? And how do we know that it works? So that was the question that stuck to me, and it became a habit of asking this question. And my inquisitive nature, along with that, is, I believe, what carried me into this data space. My data driven nature, and I think the desire to always learn, got me into pursuing various other career aspiration, education activities, such as my MBA, post graduation in data science, and then a doctorate in data quality. But I think the thread never really changed. The question remained, and it's what really followed me my whole career. And that question is, it evolved, I think. Like, for example, instead of saying why is this is the way it is, it sort of became, why do capable, well-run organizations keep making important decisions on information they don't fully trust or they don't understand? Because over the years, what I have noticed also, Isha, is that a lot of organizations are calling themselves data driven. Start looking and peeling the onion, you understand, even though that's their aspiration, they somehow struggle to really understand the information that they're going to be using to make that decisions. So once you start seeing that problem, you see it everywhere. Like, it can manifest as a sales and marketing use case, such as, a forecast that is built on customer list that nobody really understands or believes. Or it could also be a risk decision, which is made on a record that might be one person or might be three different people. So the passion was never really about data for its own sake, but it's about what trustworthy data lets people do and what bad data quality takes away before anyone can really notice. So that has been the driving force for me, I would say, in my career, which has led me through various changes and I guess career changes and also jobs that I have done over the years.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I can relate your passion towards it, solving the challenges. And these are very common challenges, right? So, specifically in sales and marketing, if a notification is sent to three different people or to one people instead of three people, so that really makes an impact, right, towards the brand trustness and visibility and impacts the image of that as well.
Yeah.
So we need to go deep dive into it and making sure the quality is good. So now next question I have it for you is, what is the root cause that in this segment people have a poor or incomplete data?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. As you mentioned, I have spent decades in the data community. Last job that I had before this one was at Dun & Bradstreet, which is one of the biggest data organizations helping people in sales and marketing and different other areas. And what I have noticed over time, I think, unfold really is that it's people are still gravitating toward gathering as much data as they possibly can, right? So because we were led to believe a few years back that the more data you can gather, the better it would be for you to make decisions. But I think
Mm,
what people missed the opportunity at the same time was it's not really about the volume and the depth of data, but it's also the quality of data. So
mm,
when you are gathering so much data, and especially in the digital world that we live in, everything kind of that we do becomes some sort of data that can be captured and gathered and can eventually be used for decision making. But we fail to realize that the data itself is just an asset that we have. We need to do something to extract insight out of it. And that's
mm,
where I think the low quality, the fragmentation, the incompleteness comes into play, where organizations don't want to do what they may call dirty work to get it all fixed and in the right condition to be effective in decision making, but rather they basically keep gathering in silos a lot of data, which never gets consolidated and brought together, and which leads to this issue of quality. And what I am seeing today, especially in this AI age that we are, everyone is racing toward doing something with AI. But there's hardly any time spent on going back and looking at the foundation, which is your data, right? If that is the right foundation for the AI to work, it could be in whatever vertical, sales and marketing, risk, compliance, whatever, right? But if you don't really pay attention to that, then AI is just going to end up making decisions on data which is not the right data. And it's going to be very confident about that decision because that's what we have seen with AI. It's very convincing. Yes,
mm,
I'm doing this and this is the right answer. But when you start
mm.
peeling the onion, you're like, well, you're confident, but you're confidently wrong. So that's the problem.
Amazing. And what is the problem that you mentioned that people are focusing on the volume instead of getting the quality right for the underlying foundations? But what will be the impact of it? Like how it has really impacted the decisions
Mhm.
which company is making?
Yeah, so the impact again can be seen throughout the organization. And let's use one example, as you alluded to, the sales and marketing, right? We'll focus on that. So the impact, in fact, that was the thesis I worked on as part of my doctorate, which was what is the poor impact of poor quality data on business performance. So let me just hone in on sales and marketing. So when a
Mm,
marketing team is underperforming, right? They're doing campaigns, but they're not really seeing the ROI from it. The instinct is to blame the campaign or the creative. Something is not right there. But often what happens is the real problem is sitting in the data underneath it. So picture a company that is running a big marketing campaign. Their customer database has the same person in it 4 or 5 times because the data is being gathered from multiple sources. It could be from the CRM, from the MRP system, the ERP system, and it's in 4 different places. There are 4 different variations of a customer because it might be slightly differently spelled in different systems. The email address might be different, right, depending on how which channel captured it. So they pay to reach that one person 4 or 5 times over and over again, and then they wonder why are they not seeing the return from it. What in fact they're doing is they're burning budget on duplicates. And it gets even worse. An existing loyal customer who gets hit with a new customer campaign come back to us offer, and now they're annoyed. And this actually personally has happened to me. And we live in a world, I'm in Canada, and you would think that companies are a bit more mature in this part of the world, but they're struggling equally just like any part of the world. And just a few weeks ago, I got reached out by my telecom provider, which I have been with for many years, asking me, we would love to have you back. We have this great offer for you. And then, you wonder, like, well, that's how much you know about me. Should I really be doing business with you? Right. So you start asking these questions. And in this example that I was talking about, this is an actual example. And, this has happened with many companies that I spoke to. And they're basically saying our campaign is not performing. We're sending all these offers. But when you peel the onion again and you look at why is the campaign not working, then you realize, okay, well, I'm marketing it to the wrong person. This person is, instead of coming back to me or giving me more business, they're getting annoyed and they're leaving me. So in one move, you have spent more money and but also damaged the relationship with that existing loyal customer. So
mm,
that is a data problem, which is basically wearing a marketing costume, in my opinion. Right? The fix is not really doing more and better campaigns. It's more around looking at the data that is going to be fueling your campaigns so you don't have duplicate records. You're looking at the right customer and you're reaching out with the right campaign to the right prospects and customers.
So, how to fix these challenges? Like you mentioned that, in our the database, the customer was at a certain level. that actually in reality that person is a loyal customer. All right. But we are thinking that we have lost that customer. So how to fix these challenges? How, like, is it the problem with where the people are storing that information in the ERP, in the CRM, or is it the we have to evaluate and having these cases in the database quality checks, right, that this should be done? So what are your thoughts and what will be your way of doing it and solving this challenge?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And there's multiple ways to tackle it. So the first thing I would say is, and this is my recommendation even to companies that are struggling with it, is that you want to understand what exactly first you're trying to accomplish here, right? So we'll go back to this campaign example and the loyal customer example. Obviously, you're going to have, depending on the size of the organization, you're going to have multiple systems where the data is stored and for the right reasons. Now, the thing to recognize here is that it's not that you need to eliminate these multiple sources and systems. It is, how do you rely on the right system to get the right information that is required for that campaign to be successful? So in my example I just shared with you, if you want to understand if you have which ones are your customers versus which ones are prospects, and then further segment them as to these are the customers that have been loyal customers and they're consistently paying for the services that I offer, versus these are the customers that are not as satisfied because I can see their complaints and the tickets that they have raised in my support system. So there, my recommendation would be, don't try to boil the ocean, right? If you're a marketing operations team, just look at all the data sources that are essential for this marketing campaign and then try to bring those together as a starting point, which is just focused on that campaign. Now, obviously, if you are a chief data officer or MDM lead or data management leader, then you want to look at it holistically because you want to eliminate this problem across the enterprise. But that is a bigger issue, which is a bit more complex. And obviously, you can do it. A lot of companies do fix it, and that is the right thing to do. But in the context of sales and marketing, you start small. You start on what data is relevant, and then you clean that up, or you bring that together and you create a marketing data warehouse, which houses connected data, which again can be simply done by using some sort of entity resolution capabilities that could help you bring data together to see holistically who your customer is and who your prospect is, what capabilities they are purchasing or using from you, what services they have, and then how do you grow that customer.
Right. So that's great. Thank you so much for sharing that. So that's a very interesting discussions that is going through. So do you want to share certain use cases around sales and marketing with which you have able to, with the data driven approach, you were able to get like business out of it, or are able to, got the customer acquisition perspective, right? So how the straightaway question would be that how sales and marketing data help in the customer acquisitions if we have done it in a right way,
Yeah.
with the right data quality.
Sure. Sure. So I think one prime example is what we just talked about, which is a sales and marketing campaign that a marketing team would do, right? So that's across the board. Any organization would basically do that. The other example where I have seen it successfully deployed in sales and marketing scenario is, let's say you're launching a product, and your new product, obviously you're investing a lot of money into it and you want to make sure that it's a successful launch. So data is the right place to start there because you're going to be marketing to those audience that are going to be the right target for this product. But then how do you determine who are the right target? The data is going to inform your decisions, right? So the first place to start obviously would be, you look at your own internal first party data. You look at which customers you already have and which ones would be the right customers for this product. So that becomes your prospect pool that you go to, but they're your existing customers. So you want to give them a very special customized offer to introduce this new product to them and then bring them on board. So you would run marketing campaigns for that. But if you don't do that carefully with the right level of quality, you can run into the problem that we just discussed with the win back example. And in fact, I have lived through this personally as well. Is if you make a one small mistake, right? And in my example that I came across with an organization was they were launching this product. They took their customer base, they looked at it, and then they looked at a prospect universe of all the leads that they had collected from multiple seminars or events that they had been at. And then they wanted to basically cross reference and see which of those prospects would have a high propensity to become customers for this particular product they were launching. But what one misstep that happened was when they did the overlap, they forgot to exclude their customers from this list. And then they targeted some of the customers from their own list, which were not the right candidates, or they were already a part of early adopter program. So again, that created some dissatisfactions from internal management perspective, because the customers felt like, why are you looking at me as a new customer while I'm already testing this for you? Or I have nothing to do with this particular vertical. Why are you marketing to me? So that one little flag in managing that sort of backfired a little bit on them. But reversely, if I look at it now and I look at that organization that actually did it very effectively by looking at the quality of the data and managing the right customers, they were able to quickly bring their product to market and target the right audience, because they were very precise with their analytics and their go-to-market approach using the data, which was driven by data. So they were able to cut down on the launch budget as well, because they had allocated a bunch of money for campaigns and stuff, but because they were so targeted and focused, they were able to save about 10 to 15% of that and use it for something else. So those are two, I think, examples that I think tell this story nicely, that if you do it right, you can be very efficient and successful from ROI perspective. And if you don't do it right, then you can see some downsides of it.
Right. So according to you, what is the right time that the companies should implement the MDM?
It really depends, right? So it depends on the organization and the maturity of the organization. So let me just sort of decouple and break up what MDM is, first of all, right? So what is MDM and why do we need to do MDM? Well, so master data management sounds technical, but the idea is very simple, right? Because when you talk to someone about MDM, the first reaction you get is, oh, that's going to be millions of dollars. It's going to take, months to implement. But if you break it up a bit, you understand what is the idea of MDM. Why do we want to do MDM? In most companies, the same customer, the product supplier, is scattered around a dozen different systems, and each one holds a slightly different version of the truth. And MDM is a discipline which is built to sort of bring it all together so that they can all agree on one trusted version. Some people call it the golden record. And when that is done well, the change shows up everywhere at once, right? So finance sees the same version, sales and customer support, marketing, they all see the same version. Now, my recommendation to organizations is that, again, start small. What are you trying to accomplish? Why do you need MDM? So break it up and tie it to your business problem that you're trying to solve. So MDM, or some aspect of MDM, I should say, any organization that is dealing with the data, they need to think about it and they need to get started with it. Doesn't mean they need to go out and purchase a platform, MDM platform. It could simply mean a small startup. You start looking at your Excel file with all the data that is stored there, or you start looking at a small database that you might have created, and then start bringing different versions of the customers that you're dealing with together, different versions of the suppliers that might be there, to bring it together so you can be confident and holistic to say that, yes, this is the same customer. It just shows up 3 different ways and there's a reason for it, but the actual essence of the customer is the same. So start there. And as you mature, your MDM practice and process should mature as well with you, because you're going to be dealing with more data, more sources. So start small and then scale up as you are growing up. And for an enterprise, obviously, you definitely need to look at a bigger platform that could help you solve problems which come with large data sets and large volumes.
Okay, that sounds interesting. So what is, in the field of sales and marketing, how the AI can help? So what can be the use cases where we can utilize AI in this industry?
So AI it has been around for many years, right? If I go back to analytics days, we used AI for that. In order to create a score, we did predictive analytics using regression models, which relied on machine learning patterns detection. So it has evolved. And I think a lot of organizations, obviously, they have also evolved with it. But now we're at a point where generative AI is creating a lot of buzz around us, and every board expects you to do something with it. So sales and marketing, in my opinion, would be the low-hanging fruit where we could start using AI. And some of the areas where I have seen work and deployed really well are in customer experience side of things. So you have a new product, your customers, you want to understand how they're using your product, what kind of issues they might be facing, and how can they quickly get the information and support that they need. AI could be a great tool for that. You would start obviously by embedding some AI capabilities within your product, such as a bot, like a chat bot, right? Which is there and it can help them guide. And AI has gone to a point where you don't even need to type anything in the chat bot. It could there be a part of your product. And if it feels like you're stuck somewhere, you're not getting through, it's proactively guiding you through it. So AI used there. The second piece is if someone is struggling and they need to actually speak to someone or they need support on a product, then they would call. And then instead of calling a person, AI could help them guide through the problem, we all use that in some aspect or not, right? So that is one other way of doing it. And then the third thing in actual sales and marketing campaign processing, where I think AI could really help is, if I go back to the example we have been talking about, marketing campaigns, instead of someone going through and gathering all this data to figure out what they need for a marketing campaign, agentic AI, deploying different agents for different parts of that marketing process could really lighten the load for someone who would have to manually track and get it all together. So the agents could figure out, this is the campaign I need to run. What is the data that I need? Now, how do I get that data? How do we need to bring it all together to understand we're talking about the customer versus prospect? In fact, it can be a bit more precise in that. So I think that is another great way of running campaigns using AI for marketing aspect. And that applies to prospecting, demand generation, but also ABM type of campaigns as well.
And have you come across with any example where AI has failed?
Yes, I have many examples. So, and the reason is this, Isha, it has failed. It's not because the AI isn't working. I think that's a very important distinction. And I make that distinction at every talk I have as well and discussion with executives, is that do not blame technology. AI, in my opinion, is a technology. AI isn't failing. AI is doing what it's built to do. And we have seen this over where organizations implemented AI to do something, but it wasn't really giving them the ROI. And the first thing they say is, our AI is broken, it's not working. So blame the data science team, blame the AI team. But the problem often is in the foundational aspect of it that AI heavily relies on, and that obviously is data. So the example where AI went wrong, it was with a bank where they deployed an AI agent to handle customer queries. So the model itself was good, and it was supposed to be the front end where they would basically accept queries. The agent would go through whatever it needed to do to quote, give them pricing quotes and things like that. But what happened was the agent was relying on fragmented identity data. So when a customer submitted an inquiry, instead of looking at it holistically, because the agent didn't have access to look at it holistically, they only had given access to one part of the data warehouse for the agent. So where the same customer existed across several systems was invisible to the agent. So the agent only looked at one part of it, and the agent confidently pulled whatever information it had in there, but that information happened to be incomplete and incorrect. This created a lot of chaos for this bank, and customer satisfaction scores just plummeted. They went down significantly. And the people, the business unit that was funding this particular initiative, they lost confidence in the AI and they said, we're no longer funding it, so we're going to shut it down. So that's one extreme example where a lot of money that was spent into creating this experience, agentic experience using AI, was sort of wasted, right? There's many other examples of that. But I think this is the key one that sticks to me because there was a lot of buy-in from executives for this, a lot of eyes on it, but it didn't really deliver.
Amazing. All right. So the last question I want to ask is, what has been the hardest lesson you have learned in your professional journey?
Yeah, so there have been many lessons, but if I were to pick one, I would say the hardest lesson for me is that it's almost never about the technology. So going back to my previous comment where people are very quick to jump on technology. And I think it's a good and a bad because when you see a new piece of technology, shining object, you sort of gravitate toward that. So people buy a lot of technology hoping that it will solve their problem, but they don't realize that technology alone can never do that. So basically what happens is, early on I assumed that if I was in the same boat, I assumed that if you built something good enough, smart enough, and accurate enough, people would obviously use it. And that's just not how I saw things work. And what I saw is the hardest part is always the people, right?
Mhm.
Getting people to trust, getting them to change how they work, because technology ultimately is going to change the way they work. Having them let go of the spreadsheets as an example, instead of relying on AI or some sort of technology to help with something that they have been doing manually for 10 plus years. And I have watched technically brilliant projects quietly fail because nobody adopted them, and modest projects succeed because the team believed in them and they actually used them. So the lesson is here is that more than once, if I'm honest, is that adoption and trust are the real deliverables. The technology is maybe half the job, the other half is human and the culture that you drive to get people to adopt and use the technology.
Amazing. That's a really great perspective because we create projects, we create initiative, right? And nobody is using that, then there is no use of creating that. So ultimately, adoption is very important. So you build small, even one feature that should be able to help other people, right? And to see, to educate them is what problems and challenges they are facing, and for the user adoption, right? So once that is there, they have started utilizing it, then pull in more features into that which can help them in order to do it.
Exactly. And just on that note, Isha, one thing I always tell executives is that don't start with technology. That's a
Mhm.
mistake that almost everyone makes. So,
Mhm.
instead of going shopping for a platform or technology, instead, I would say focus on what really matters for the business the most, right? So, what is one thing if you could do that would help drastically your business be successful? And that one decision generally matters to the business. And it's basically what I have found is that when you ask that question, they realize this is what I need to do. But in order to do that, I need this process, I need this data, and then I need this technology to do it, right? So if you do that, then you're almost kind of like forced to think through the process as opposed to jumping onto the technology bandwagon and saying, my technology is going to automatically fix that. But instead, you realize technology is just one part of the equation. There's process, there's people, there's data, there's so many things that play together. So
Mhm.
always my recommendation is always start with what are you trying to accomplish? No matter where you are in the organization, I gave you examples of marketing operations. Start
Mhm.
what you're trying to accomplish. Then same thing with the data team. Start by thinking what your organization is trying to do and then back into that.
Right. All right. So that is all I wanted to ask today. I think the conversation has been really insightful. Thank you so much for sharing your journey, experience, practical tips on data quality, master data management, and what it really takes to make sure that AI work in the real world. It's real pleasure having you on the executive.
Thank you so much, Isha. It has been a pleasure for me as well. I love sharing insights. So hopefully this will be helpful to some folks listening. And thank you so much for giving me the opportunity.